On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, the Houston Texans win a nail-biter against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We talk about the defensive mindset shift in the second half and how penalties continue to be a theme that has derailed this offensive success.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to a Victory Monday. We
let me eat these dogs, man. It's been a long time since I eat these dogs, baby.
It's been a long time, but we almost didn't get to this Victory Monday. However, almost doesn't count. The Houston Texans pull out a victory 24-20 over the Jacksonville Jaguars to get us to this Victory Monday. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers checking out the show. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, thank you to our everydayers, the ones that go through this up and down roller coaster with us. We go through it with you guys. We appreciate you coming back for more Texans talk. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, all the way up in Detroit, still holding it down for the South, Cody M. Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Cody, we got a lot to talk about, and it's going to be like that for the next couple of days. Nico Collins with another monster performance. Top 10 receiver? No doubt. Top 5 receiver? No doubt. Top 3 receiver? Now let's talk about it. Also, the defensive shift in the second half. Also got to highlight that, fourth down goal line stand to help the Houston Texans keep their hopes alive. But we open up today's show looking at the penalties and the offensive production. That's going hand in hand. The penalties, again, over 10 penalties for the Houston Texans, and we've seen how those penalties are affecting Houston. You make a big play, you're able to move the chains. Oh, wait, hold on, flag on the play. You got to bring it back. And CJ talked about, and D'Amico Ryans, he started off the press conference talking about we got to stop starting behind the sticks. So I want to give it to you again. Penalties hindering this offense and how successful it could be.
Man, it's the third consecutive game we're sitting here talking about how penalties are hindering this team, John, listeners and viewers. And for the third consecutive game, we're sitting here, I'm getting to the point now, and I understand, maybe if not today, maybe tomorrow or later on in the week, we'll talk about Bobby Sloyd, whether or not he's being conservative or not, whether or not he has
tomorrow.
Maybe or not he, well, today, whatever the case might be, I know we're going to get into Bobby Sloyd at some point. But John, I'm starting to wonder if it's not Bobby Sloyd, but I'm starting to wonder how much the way Bobby Sloyd is calling these games, I'm wondering how much is just him not wanting to do too much because due to the deficiencies of the offensive line. This is the third consecutive game we're sitting here talking about penalties with this offensive line. Think about it. We're not sitting here talking about the pressures. We're not sitting here talking about sacks. We're not sitting here talking about whether or not they could create holes. They're doing all three of those things to a certain extent. But yet, every time they have a successful drive, a successful play, they are getting called back due to these penalties.
Yeah, I do want to add that the Houston Texans, again, over 10 penalties on the day, 12 penalties, resulting in a loss of 93 yards, nearly 100 yards lost from penalties. And Cody, I want to add this. I don't know how much longer Chris Stroud, the offensive line coach, has in Houston.
Look, before you go any further, John, I think we're going to see changes this week because just listen to what Coach D'Amico Ryans had to say following the game.
As we know, a lot of things to clean up for us with the penalties. It's like we're trying to break the record for most penalties in the league, which we got to clean up. This is our third straight game of over 10 penalties. It's just, not good enough, and we have to find the guys who want to do it right all the time and play clean football there. But penalties that bug me the most and we have to get off of our tape and off of our team is the mental penalties. That's the ones I can't stand and I can't go for it. Like, we have to play smart. If we want to be a good football team, you have to play the game smart. And we talk about, we look at other teams around the league and we have meetings on these things, and guys just have to own up to it and be man enough to stand up and just play the game the right way. A lot of them just bonehead penalties that are, it's uncalled for, right? You don't need those. They're not helping us at all. When we had positive things that happen to us, and we're going backwards. We're in field goal range, and we go backwards because of our own mistakes. So, again, seem like I'm a broken record every time I stand up here. The Texans have to get out of the Texans' way for us to be a good team.
Woo! So, I was there. And I'm going to – let me take you guys into a little bit of the mind of a man. We can't go for it. I don't want to go for it. I ain't going for it. When I heard that and I looked at Coach Ryan's demeanor and his tone, and we got to get out of our own way, I immediately thought to myself, I don't know if there's going to be a shift in the offensive line, and I don't think so, nor should there be a shift because
they ain't got the people.
They ain't got the people. Blake Fisher got some time to play in this game.
I think he had 2 drives, and I counted that he gave up 5 pressures just that fast in 2 drives.
The guys that they have on the field has to be the guys that they continue to roll with, barring any injuries. No doubt about it. But I think when we start to look at where the change can be made, we can't have it on our team. We cannot have this on our team. That's directly from D'Amico Ryans' mouth, and he's 100% right. I don't know how much longer Chris Stroud has here in Houston, because when you make those big plays in games that you need, Houston came out, and I'm going to use this for just an example overall, Cody, listeners and viewers, right out of the gate, 2 3-and-outs, right? Okay, we'll talk about that, of course, no doubt about it. But when I look at the offensive line and you're trying to get that rhythm going and you just cannot get the rhythm going because, again, 10-yard penalty, 5-yard penalty. So now instead of 1st and 10, 1st and 15, 1st and 20, and then now you have a play caller that, okay, maybe I should run a screen earlier in the drive. Now I'm going to do it. And so now I'm looking at 2nd and 16. Those are those downs. Those are those moments where, from an offensive line standpoint, from whoever is committing the penalty standpoint, from your offensive coordinator standpoint, from your head coach standpoint, and from your quarterback perspective, guys, I'm great. We know that. But how often do you want me to thrive when I'm playing from behind? Now, he did it today. Was not able to do it last week. The Buffalo Bills coming to town next week, jumping ahead a little bit. But these penalties for a 3rd consecutive week, over 10 penalties, nearly 100 yards for a 3rd consecutive week, punching yourselves in the face, shooting yourself in the foot. You would not be able to survive as an NFL team like that. You will not make it to the Super Bowl like that if you continue to hurt your own self and your production. That at this point, with a not healthy team, no Joe Mixon, no Dameon Pierce, and I do think there's some injury to that offensive line that nobody's disclosing. No Tank Dell out there. Don't know what's really going on with Dalton Schultz. He's not really a part of the game plan. Everything is not clicking. So when you're able to create those big moments, you have to hold on and cherish it. And it seems like whenever those moments are made, they continue to just drop the ball. They're not good stewards of those good moments.
Man, and you sit here and you just take a look at what CJ did. 27 for 40, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, look, Nico Collins, we're going to get into him later on in the show, but a career high 12 catches for 151 yards. Your next highest wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, 5 for 69. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say Stephon Diggs had, I know 1 for sure, but maybe 2 big plays that was called back due to a holding or a legal man down screen or whatever the case might be. And look, I understand that there's a lot that goes on. And I remember I got so fed up with the penalties so much. I remember I texted you and Sarge like, are the refs not letting the offensive line do their job? But it's to the point, John, that one, I must say that I'm happy that the Texans are going through this right now because, look, you might as well say starting next week when you welcome the Buffalo Bills to town, this schedule is about to get tough. And I know the Texans right now sitting at the top of their division, 3-1, but I'm looking at a situation where they could easily be 2-2, maybe 1-3, give or take, depending on how you feel about that Chicago Bears game. But they need to do something in order to get these penalties right, because it was a detriment and hindered them last week against Minnesota. Jacksonville don't know what the hell going on over there, but they are nowhere near as good as I thought they was going to be. Now they're 0-4. Then you had Chicago, a lot of injuries, inexperience going on, rookie quarterback and all that other stuff. There were some things like these are mistakes that the Houston Texans were able to overcome because the team was just not that good. Next week against Buffalo, starting next week against Buffalo, and this potential as of right now, league MVP and Josh Allen, if those same penalties continue to hamper this offense and continue to hamper this team, you're looking at a situation where Texans going to fall to 3-2. I don't want us looking at a situation saying the Houston Texans wasn't as good as we thought due to penalties or whatever the case might be.
I do think so. 3 ineligible men downfield calls today, 2 on King Green. King Green had a terrible game, god-awful game. Pass blocking was probably the worst we've seen from him since his rookie year. There was times where I thought that he regressed to the player from his rookie year. Just not a good base, not good technique, in leaning or not having a good foundation was hindering him to being able to maintain a lot of those blocks. And he had 2 of those ineligible men down the field. I will say, to be fair, one of them was probably due to CJ Stroud not just taking off with the ball. He did a better job of running the ball today from a quarterback standpoint, but he had a few of those called back because of penalties as well. An issue that is I think is apparent right now, and I'm going to say this because I know we had a CJ Stroud video. The Texans have not, for 3 weeks now, have not been able to establish the rhythm. And they came out of that second half, 2 back-to-back 3-and-outs, and at no point did we see a sense of urgency from that offense. And at no point did we see an up-tempo offense. And I asked CJ, I said, CJ, you guys can kind of flip it when you want to. Whenever you're, hey, we got to get this done. We got to move the ball. Right before the half, they would have scored a touchdown. CJ overthrew Nico. He wants that one back. And then to end off the game, look how quickly they were able to get down. I think it was 7 plays, 63 yards to get down there and score a touchdown. Listen to what CJ Stroud had to say.
CJ, it seems like at times you guys are just able to turn it on, coming out at halftime, 2, 3 and outs, but then the final drive, you guys are moving the ball kind of with ease, aside from the penalties that had you guys go backwards. At what point do you start to look at the offense and say, no, we can be so much better if we play with a faster tempo and be able to play our brand of football?
We're playing our brand of football, man. We're just because you get 2, 3 and out doesn't mean you're having a bad day. I respect what you're saying. I understand. But just because you go tempo don't mean like things just start rolling. Like we tried that weeks prior and we're just getting shells, So, but I do understand where you're coming from. I think we can, get more of a tempo and get going a little more. And then not even just staying no huddle, really just getting out the huddle, breaking the huddle the right way. All the elite teams I ever watched growing up, Patriots, I watched Stafford a lot with the Rams. I can go so on and so forth. Man, you watch it on TV as a kid, you see how quick they break from the huddle when they get on the line of scrimmage. And the defense feels that. And now you get an opportunity to read the defense a little more, and I think that's where we can take the next level and get better at. But yeah, I definitely do think we came out a little short out of the second half, but it's not about looking down on yourself. It's all about the next play, making the next play the better play. And my team actually helped me doing that. Missed a throw in the first half that I know I can make, and I just rushed it. But they picked me up and came back in the locker room and just went from there. And we don't. That's one thing about ball. You can't like hang your head down too long, because man, the other team ain't doing that. They trying to get you. So yeah. But I definitely do understand where you're coming from. But I feel like, man, we got a lot of good things going on offense, and we got to just clean things up for sure.
You know what was funny? I saw a lot of Texan fans leaving the game right before they drove down to score the touchdown, the winning touchdown. And I thought to myself, well, those are probably people that don't cherish their money and what they buy with their money.
Right.
And maybe they got those tickets for free and was like, I don't care. I didn't spend my money on it. Or maybe they just didn't heed our warning, not warning, but heed what we always tell you guys, and that's checking out Game Time. And you feel a little bit better when you save money, right? I know I do. And with Game Time, please download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, because with Game Time, you can check out and get Texans tickets, Astros tickets, Rockets tickets, Houston tickets. No matter what tickets that you are looking for, you can find them on Game Time. You can also, like we said, use promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Right now, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event, including Texans games, even easier. They filter out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. If you're gonna waste money, waste it on the discount, not waste it because you thought the Texans were gonna lose their game. Stick around, sit down, watch the game. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's
game time. Woo!
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we shift our conversation over to the defensive side of the ball, I wanted to piggyback off of CJ's comments just by saying, hey, I think this is a much more dangerous team when they play with a sense of urgency. There's too many times when we would see the offensive line just kind of walking to out of the break of the huddle, not necessarily playing with a fire under their tail. And I thought from a play caller standpoint, there were too many times, way too many times, where Houston will get a good game, and then the next play, or they get a big play, and then the next play, we're seeing a sweep with Steven Sims, right? We're seeing a run up the middle with J.J. Taylor. Right, I saw too many times where there could have been more of a focus offensively with allowing CJ to just go through his progressions as a quarterback and as a damn good one. And I thought the ball was taken out of his hands too much after the Texans made a good play, especially in that second half, aside from the game-winning drive, where they needed that moment, where they needed those moments, where they needed CJ to just command the huddle, command the offense, and make the plays. And I think that right now Houston is suffering from an identity crisis a little bit. Do I want to stick to the script, or do I want to allow my superstar quarterback to be the star quarterback that he is? And they've been clashing for 3 weeks now. They've been clashing for the last, aside from that final drive and in the first half, for 6 quarters and a little bit more, they've been clashing, and they got to find a way to mesh it all together. You have CJ, allow CJ to be the quarterback that we know he is, and stop taking the ball out of his hands and stop limiting the rhythm that he can create by getting himself going. That's been the issue. No tempo, no rhythm, and we've seen it too many times where the Houston Texans are not scoring no points.
And I'm not going to say too much on the Bobby Sawyer part on that aspect, only because, John, that's something I've been saying over the last 2 weeks, man. We started seeing it against the Chicago Bears, and now 3 weeks later, we are still talking about the same thing. Once again, this is something that Bobby Sawyer has to figure out, because starting next week, your schedule is going to start getting tough, and we don't want to see a situation where we're sitting here time and time again talking about whether or not Bobby Sloyd is holding his team back, whether or not Bobby Sloyd is holding his offense back, whether or not Bobby Sloyd is holding CJ Stroud back. However, what I do want to say, thankfully, Bobby Sloyd don't have nothing to do with the defense, because once again, this defense played a really good game. Look, John, first and foremost, I want to give a special shout out. No. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was as good as we saw early on in the season. But I want to say this, man. I want to give a special shout out to Kalen Bullock, because if he doesn't stop that touchdown, what was that, like early in the third quarter, midway through the third? I can't remember the actual timestamp. We're looking at a situation where we're sitting here, we're probably talking about the Houston Texans on the 2-game losing streak. Here's what Coach Nico Collins had to say about Kalen Bullock's play during that time.
Yeah, one thing our defense stands on is effort, and there's no better play that exhibits that effort than Kalen right, giving us a blade of grass to stand on. So Kalen's effort to run him down and get a stop, and for us to regroup after such a huge play, for us to regroup and then be able to get a stop there in the red zone, that's a big turning point in the game. So, and that shows what effort means. And if you play the game the right way with that type of effort, it can put you in position to be on the winning side. So proud of Kalen for his effort.
I'm not about to sit here and say that the Houston Texans had one of their best defensive performances of the season, but what I would say, John, the one thing that I like, I love how majority every time it was third down, Coach Nico Collins was blitzing. I did like that, and I think that's something he should continue doing. I love seeing everybody up front on the defensive line. But to and most importantly, man, there were several times to where it was a crucial defensive stop that was needed, and several players stepped up, whether that was Jalen Petrie, whether that was Derek Stingley Jr. on several occasions, whether it was Kalen Bullock, whether it was Kamari Lassiter. And I know they was picking on Kamari Lassiter a lot, but he did have one or two big-time deflections, man. I love how these players were able to step up when needed to make sure that they kept the Jacksonville Jaguars in range, because had they didn't, we're looking at a situation where the Jaguars would have walked out of Houston with their first victory of the 2024 season.
Yeah, a lot of credit to the Texans holding it down, 4th and goal. This is that, and it was Tank Bigsby that had that 58-yard run that Kalen Bullock was able to tackle by the hairs of his young chin. They stopped the Jacksonville Jaguars. They should have went for the 3, but they went for the touchdown to try to put it away for real. And defensively, they just held their own. I think that was Tim Settle or Foley Fadakowski.
That was Fadakowski
on the sack on Trevor Lawrence. And so you look at that, it's like, man, that's a great play. I don't necessarily have a lot of negatives from the defense. I thought that today we saw why the speed of Kamari Lassiter was a concern for a lot of people coming out of college, because they were able to get behind him a few times. And I do want to credit D'Amico and their defensive coaching staff. Brian Thomas made a play, and it's like, man, where is Derek Stingley? And then they switched, and Derek Stingley started to follow Brian Thomas a little bit more to kind of take him out. So I'm interested to see those advanced stats, once it's posted, to highlight that. And I also thought there was a play, it was 3rd down, where you actively saw the Jacksonville Jaguars try to confuse the Houston Texans defense by running one of those mesh crossing pick routes. Last year, they would have broke free and probably got a touchdown on it, right? That was an issue for the Houston Texans last year. But the discipline of this defense allowed them to be able to make a play. And I think that's what Jalen Petrie made a play and was able to secure it and force a 4th down. I thought that my only negative takeaway from this defensive team was, Cody, what did D'Amico Ryans want this week?
More sacks.
Right? And so I thought that's where we can really start looking at, nitpicking a little bit. But then you look into it, it's not necessarily nitpicking, because when was the last time we called Danielle Hunter's name? It's been 2 games now. Didn't call Will Anderson Jr. name a lot today. I think he had maybe 1 tackle. And so for one guy to be making over $20 million, for the other guy to be coming off a great season as a rookie, those guys have to be better. And it ain't really just necessarily about getting after the quarterback, especially for Will Anderson. And so now I'm curious to see, did the Jacksonville Jaguars run towards Danielle Hunter to neutralize him in the run game? Because the fact of the matter is, the Jags ran for over 100 yards. The Jags ran the ball for 158 yards, 6.6 yards a carry. Tank Bigsby, 7 carries, 90 yards, 12.9 yards a pop. So I thought that interior guys didn't have the best days, but I thought they showed up more than the guys like Danielle Hunter, then Will Anderson. I thought that the Jags front offensive line, I thought they were whooping the Texans front 7 for majority of that game, honestly. And I thought that there was moments where they were just overpowered, and they were allowing guys to just 5 yards. Oh, big pickup, 10 yards. That is not what we've seen from this defense so far this year. And I wonder how they're going to go about kind of retooling that, because, we're kind of moving ahead a little bit, but they're playing the Bills next. And that's an area of their game where I think through 3 weeks, now 4, this Texas defense have prided themselves on. we have been able to not allow teams to run crazy on us. And we've been able to create that interior pressure in our ends, whether it be Will Anderson, whether it be Derek Barnett, who we've heard more than Danielle Hunter. Our ends have been able to kind of clean it up with the sacks and bring the quarterbacks down. A couple of sacks today for the Houston Texans. Didn't do the best of job up front, and I thought that they were controlled in the run game. But overall, I thought that especially down the stretch, the defense showed up, mirroring the effort that they gave against the Chicago Bears. Not as intense, because there was moments where I thought they were a little bit more laid back. So not as intense, but still a good effort. Just some things that they need to clean up on. And number one is just making sure they can get consistent pressure from the guys and the guy you paid to do that.
You talk about individual guys who stepped up on the defensive side of the ball. A huge shout out to Eric Murray, man. You're talking about a guy who stepped up really big for the Houston Texans, had about 5 tackles, a sack during the third quarter, and he had an opportunity to get one of those big-time deflections late in the fourth quarter to kind of contain the Jacksonville Jaguars. Huge shout out to Eric Murray, man. He did his thing today. And you talking about
really quick, the first Brian Thomas touchdown, went back and watched it. Okay, we saw Eric Murray over there. Mm-hmm. That was a rookie mistake and a rookie moment from Kalen Bullock. That was an RPO. Kalen Bullock bit down very hard, and Trevor Lawrence was able to kind of hit Brian Thomas right over the middle where Kalen Bullock would have been in that zone or that area. So aside from that being maybe accredited to Eric Murray had a sack on the day. Eric Murray made some plays. For the 4th week in a row, Eric Murray, my bad. Now, I don't want to see you matched up with these number 1 receivers, but I thought he had a good game for the Houston Texans.
He had a good game, but God, dog, Nico Collins had a great game. We're going to highlight Nico Collins and his career day on the other side of the break.
12 out here. Guys, listen. Right now, you can win big on FanDuel. They're back, and FanDuel is America's number 1 sports book, and they're back and they're hooking you guys up. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the latest stats. You want to view live play-by-play. And you also want to just check out so much more on the same place you place your bets. You can do that with FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It's easy. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to get started today. America's number 1 sports book.
Just to piggyback off of your statement of saying you got to work on those details, can't start off 2nd and 20. What's some of the things that you guys do offensively that allow you to get into that rhythm to kind of move away from those 2nd and 20s, 1st and 15s to have that fast pace rhythm going into some of those drives?
It's hard to pick back up, but I feel like we got to get back, make a play, so we get back on track. And that's what we did. I feel like we never got our heads down. We continue to build every play. Just take one play at a time. That's what we did. End up moving the ball down the field and end up putting points on the board. I feel like that's very important. Keeping the drives alive, just have one play at a time. So that was our mindset. Just put points on the board, and that's what we did. Just having trust in each other, having each other back, and that's what we did.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Victory Monday installment of Locked On Texans, man, as we continue to break down the Houston Texans 24-20 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars. John, before we go, man, I just wanted to say, man, I am so doggone happy, proud, and excited just watching Nico Collins' growth over these last couple of years, man. And look, I know the guys that's been rocking with us for an extremely long time have heard me say this for about 2 years now. But, John, I would never forget at the end of his sophomore season, and that locker room was sad. And I remember I was standing there and I was talking to him about, hey, what you going to do throughout the offseason or whatever the case might be. And you guys always knew that I was a believer in Nico Collins. And I can't remember how we got on this conversation about the great Texans wide receivers in history. And I just remember him telling me I want my name to be up there with Andre Johnson, D-Hop, and he said Brandon Cooks, but Brandon Cooks' locker at the time was right next to him, and I kind of felt he just said it just to be nice because, B. Cook had his mind in other places at the time. But John, man, every time I see Nico Collins ball out, man, I just think back to that conversation. And I tell you guys, man, I'm so proud of him, man, and just happy to see his success. By the way, everybody knows his numbers on the day, career high, 12 catches for 151 yards. That is his 8th game of 100 and more yards dating back to last season. And out of the first, in 3 out of the first 4 games, this young man has eclipsed over 100 yards that many times, man. At this point, man, I know we said it. Nico Collins is a top 10 wide receiver without a doubt. Now I'm starting to get a sense. Maybe we got to start talking about him being top 3, top 5, man. Plain and simple.
Right now in this NFL season, he's absolutely, undoubtedly, right now, top 3 receiver in the NFL.
Are you saying top 2 right behind Justin Jefferson? Because outside of Justin Jefferson, can you name a wide receiver that's been more productive and better than him right now?
Tyreek Hill. Right now, if we 4 games into this season, going back to last season, I still got to look at Cheetah. I think right now that his situation is unfortunate, but for Nico, this is what I love about Nico. 2 years ago, coming off his second season, I say, man, y'all don't understand how good he has gotten as a player. Remember that conversation?
Yeah.
And it was, well, why you only got this? You know, he's always hurting. I'm saying, okay, well, he's missing games. I understand it, but put the tape on. Put the tape on. Watch how many yards is being left out on the field.
And by quarterback play. That hurts my heart to say.
And I was about to say, by inadequate quarterback play, look how many yards were left out of the field, from the field, because the ball wasn't able to get to him. Nico, since CJ Stroud has got to Houston, now it was a light shine on the things that he does well and an offense that can help expound on the things that he does well, and a quarterback that can get him the ball after he does all of the things that he does well. Good. So for Nico to have this moment, to be number 1 in the NFL in receiving yards, to be a staple for this offense, and honestly, time and time again, bailing this offense out. It's like Bernie Mac on Head of State. I'm a Bells bomb. He's bailing this team out when they need a big play because they work on the scramble drill at practice. CJ and Nico being on the same page, I think it's kind of funny. We're recording this on Sunday. Saturday was an amazing day for college football, but you got an Ohio State and you got a Michigan Wolverine on the same page, terrorizing NFL defenses. But those guys have been linked in, locked on since CJ has got to town. And for me, I just look at a man that has worked his tail off. A lot of doubters, but it was a reason why Nick Caserio traded up for him. It's the reason why they had moved on from him. It's the reason why they gave him that extension. And honestly, right now it's a bargain, that 3-year, $72 million deal. Nico has been, of all of the games, specifically Sunday's game against the Jaguars, he's been a bright spot because he is a bailing offense out type of playmaker. And it's even better when you have a bailing offense out playmaker at quarterback as well that can get you that ball. So congratulations to Nico, continuing to make his stamp. He's on pace for nearly 2,000 yards right now. Do I think he'll get 2K?
Yes.
It always seems like
let's do it. Yes.
Something happens to where that 2K is not
2K.
attainable.
2K.
But let me say this. Now with this extra game, 17 games now, if he gets 2K,
let's go.
I'm Nico's agent. Hey, Nick, we got to rework this deal, man. I think we need a little bit more on the back end. And I think you need to go ahead and cough it up. But he was a bright spot for the Houston Texans offensively. CJ Stroud went out there and threw the ball. Had a great game. Only missed 13 passes, 27 of 40, 345 yards, 2 TDs, 8.6 yards a throw. Sacked twice, but a passer rating of 110, QBR of 74. We also got to give the Texas defense a lot of credit for how much they contain a very average, below average quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, only 169 yards through the day. 2 TDs. One of those TDs came after a muff punt from Steven Sims. John Mitchell was active. I don't know how much time Steven Sims has.
He's going to be on LinkedIn by Tuesday. Look at use him for the LinkedIn ad this week.
Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com. Terms and conditions apply. I don't know how much longer he has left with the Houston Texans, but some bright spots for the Houston Texans. Ran the ball for 100 yards. Cam Akers, 4.1 yards a pop, had a big run of 15 yards, 13 carries, 53 yards. Stephon Diggs, I thought, had a good game. He had a running touchdown, 5 catches, 69 yards. Ray, man. Ray. And Enrique was at the game. So shout out to the family love. This was a good, scrappy win for the Houston Texans to pull out. And they did it in a fashion that may have been like heart attack-ish for the fans, but they got the dub, and I feel sorry for you guys that walked out the stadium and didn't get a chance to witness it live. Because boy, was it electric.
T-Mac taught this city that a valuable lesson 20 years ago, and they still ain't learned. And James. And CJ last year. You ain't got to go back 20 years ago. Come on, man. But hey, that's why we the age, baby.
Thank you guys for watching the Locked On Texan podcast. We'll be a little bit more, I think, organized tomorrow. Today was just one of those days.
It was organized, man.
It was organized. But I feel like tomorrow we may have it. I don't know. Today was a good show. And we thank y'all for sticking around. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.